go from a corruptible to an incorruptible crown.
That night, a silent storm frozen in the pages of history. A king knew this would be his final night, inside a silent chamber seated on the cold stone floor. Not as a ruler, but as a father, he pulled his children close one last time, as if trying to hold time itself still. 13-year-old Elizabeth, completely broken. Her sobs blur into pain, uncontrollable and raw. And little Henry, only 8, yet his eyes carry an unsettling understanding. Charles gently lifts him into his arms. His voice is soft, but carries the weight of history. Listen, whatever Parliament offers you, whatever promises they make, you must never accept the crown. For a moment, everything stands still.
Listen to whatever Parliament offers you. You mustn't promises they make.
Young Henry looks into his father's eyes. Then he answers, "Even if I'm torn apart, I will not." The words were small, but the promise carried the weight of an empire. Charles walks them to the door. It opens, light spills in. They begin to leave, but suddenly, Charles stops. Something feels unfinished. He turns back again. One last time, he embraces them again. This time, he says nothing. Words are no longer needed. Then, soldiers take them away. The door shuts. The room falls silent. A strange, heavy stillness fills the air. There is nothing left to do, because he knows. By morning, execution awaits him. This is that story. Not just the fall of a king, but the path that led him to this moment. London, January 30th, 1649. Dawn has not yet arrived. Yet the city is already awake. Restless with anticipation, snow blankets the ground, stone streets frozen solid. By the Thames, frozen air blends with thick fog. Each breath feels sharp, like the air itself cuts through you. Still, people keep coming. 1, 2, then hundreds. They push through the darkness. Some climb onto rooftops. Others squeeze into windows, pushing forward for a better view. From St. James's to Whitehall, every street fills with people. Some came from nearby, others from far away. They don't know what they're supposed to feel, fear, grief, or curiosity. But they know. They will not miss this moment. Inside St. James's Palace, time seems to slow. Charles slept only 4 hours. Yet he rises before dawn. He walks to the window and draws the curtain aside. Outside, his city, the one he fought for, and in the end, the one he lost to. He stands there in silence and then speaks. "Today I have a great task."
Today I have a great task.
There is no fear in his voice, only acceptance. He asks for an extra shirt. The cold outside is severe. He will be outside for long. But that's not the real reason. He does not want anyone to think he trembles in fear. A king and maintains dignity to the end. We now follow him on his final walk. But before that, we pause, because to understand, we must look back, how everything led to this moment. A brief 30-second context. In just a 30-second moment lies the seed of a kingdom's downfall. Charles Stuart was not just a king. He was the embodiment of a belief he deeply and unwaveringly believed, that a king's authority comes directly from God, meaning his rule, his decisions, couldn't be judged by any human authority. No parliament, no court, no law, created by ordinary men. This was not arrogance. To him, this was absolute truth, a belief inherited from his father, and one he grew up embracing. But the problem was, not everyone in the country accepted this belief. England was breaking from within. Religious divisions, political conflicts, an invisible pressure was building everywhere, and Charles unwittingly intensified that pressure. His Catholic queen, repeatedly dissolving Parliament and ruling alone for 11 years. Each move felt like pouring oil on fire. For nearly 2 decades, every small crack in the nation slowly turned into a massive fracture. And finally, in 1642, it exploded. The Civil War began. A war not just for land, but for ideas, for power, for the question of who should rule. The war lasted 5 years. From city to city, from village to village, blood spread across England. Nearly 200,000 died, one of the bloodiest conflicts in its history. In the end, the royalists collapsed. Charles was defeated.
The standard falls! All is lost! Press on! The day is ours! We cannot hold! Retreat!
A king was no longer a king, but a prisoner. He was captured, taken to prison, and once even escaped in search of freedom. But fate and history both stood against him. He was captured again. December 1648. England was no longer in war alone. The final game of power was unfolding. Soldiers stood outside Parliament. But they were not guarding. They were selecting. Not every MP was allowed inside. Only those who supported the king's trial. Those who disagreed were turned away at the door.
By order of Parliament, you are barred. Turn away. This is an outrage. I demand entry. Move along, now.
One by one, voices were removed, until only 46 remained inside. 26 said, yes. And that single word changed the course of history. January 20th, 1649. A trial began. Unlike anything before it, Charles entered the court, not as a prisoner, but as a king. His attire was perfect: black velvet suit, white lace collar, and the Order of the Garter on his chest. He did not remove his hat, a small detail yet powerful. For him, authority was absolute. He bowed to no one, not to anyone. As the trial began, he interrupted them. No emotion in his voice, yet every word was razor sharp. He asked, "By what authority am I brought here?" A question that challenged the entire system. First day, second day, third day. He repeated the same question. No answer was given. He accepted no charges, only questions and silent refusal. And, surprisingly, he was not entirely wrong. Legally, historically, never before had a king been put on trial like this. This was not just a trial, it was the beginning of a new era. Before this, such a scene had never occurred in history. No court, no institution had ever put a king on trial. The authority they claimed did not exist on paper, not in law, not in tradition, not in history. But history does not always follow rules. Some moments come where rules are broken and new rules are born. January 27th, 1649. The verdict was announced. Not a word, but a list. Guilty, tyrant, traitor, murderer. Each of these words thrown at a king by the court of his own country. Charles wanted to speak, perhaps for the last time, to voice his own position in his own words, but he was stopped. His voice was cut off halfway. Then he was removed. A king no longer had the right to speak. He was given 3 days, only 3 days, to prepare for the end of a life. He spent this time in a peculiar silence, with paper and pen. He wrote dicts to his sons. The words may have been brief, but within each line lay a father's final advice, final love, final presence. January 29th. His children were brought to him again, Elizabeth and little Henry. Same room, same cold floor, same heavy silence. But this time, everything was deeper, because they knew this was the end. For the last time, they embraced. Time seemed to stop in that moment. No one could speak, yet everything was being said. January 30th. Finally, the day had come. The curtain was drawn back. The entire city waited for a scene they might never forget. Suddenly, a loud knock at the door. No announcement, no drama, just a signal. The time had come. 10 a.m. Charles was brought out from St. James's Palace, walking. This small detail carried enormous meaning. He was not hidden in a carriage, nor behind curtains. He was brought forward, in full view of the people, he walked, slowly, steadily, through St. James's Park. Armed soldiers surrounded him, swords, guns, vigilant eyes. Yet anyone could see him. A king, on his final journey, in front of the people. Nearly a mile to Whitehall. It took only 15 minutes, but these 15 minutes pulled the memories of a lifetime along. This park was more than a path. Here, Charles once played with his children. There was laughter, running, carefree moments. He would run across the grass, chasing after his little children. A silver rod lay with him, used to measure their height, kept solely for that purpose. Small moments, not recorded in history, yet carrying the true meaning of life. He would call to his queen, "Dear heart." No politics in the word, no play for power, just love. All in all, Charles was more than a king. He was a devoted father and a gentle, loving husband. But history never sees the whole person. History only sees their decisions, their consequences, and their final moments. A man whose personal life was strangely different from the ruthless tyrant his enemies portrayed. The way he is painted in history was not exactly who he was in reality, but history never tells the full story of a human being. Now, soldiers stood across the entire park, row after row, silent, motionless, and beside them stood the crowd, thousands of people. Yet no one spoke. This silence was unnatural, because London in 1649 was never quiet. It was a living city, filled with market cries, church bells ringing, horses' hooves rushing through streets. Here, arguments never stopped. Shouts echoed. Laughter spread through every alley. Every open door felt like life spilling out. But today, everything had stopped. The entire city seemed to hold its breath. Charles was walking, fast, but not rushed. His eyes straight ahead. He looked at no one, sought no reaction. Those who saw him that day all later said the same thing. He was steady, strangely calm, almost peaceful, as if he had already accepted this path. Inside, storms may have raged, fear, regret, memories. But outside, nothing showed. A king who did not allow himself to break. Even in his final moments, he crossed the park. Now, Whitehall, at the door of his final destination. And now, the waiting began. A long, heavy wait, where time seemed to slow down 2 p.m. Charles was taken inside the banqueting house. This place, a symbol of royal power. But today, it had become a stage of irony. Above his head, a massive ceiling painting. Artist, Peter Paul Rubens. And this painting, that was commissioned by Charles himself, it shows, carried by angels, surrounded by divine light, symbols of heavenly power all around. This was not just art. It was a declaration of belief that kings are chosen by God and answerable only to him. And directly beneath that painting, Charles walked, slowly, toward his own death. The irony of this moment was unbearable. The belief he held all his life, that gave him strength, that made him different from others. Now that very belief glowed above him in gold. But reality was completely different. He crossed the hall. Each step brought him closer to the end. Then he stopped at a window. Outside, the entire city waited. He stepped through the window and onto the scaffold. The crowd was impossibly vast. As far as the eye could see, people, nothing but people. They pressed forward against the new model army. Soldiers stood in perfect lines, like a living wall, between the crowd and the platform. Beyond that wall, one of history's most extraordinary moments was about to unfold. Royalist or parliamentarian, all boundaries blurred in this moment, because no one wanted to be absent from this moment. No one. This was not just an execution. It was something unprecedented. A king on his own soil, before his own people, about to be executed. It had never happened before, and perhaps it would never happen again. Charles stepped onto the platform, that wooden scaffold under where a reign would end, a belief, a life. He looked around, just once, thousands of faces, silent, waiting. Then he composed himself and began to speak.
I am leaving a perishable crown for an imperishable one. I have delivered to God, and now I deliver my soul to you. I gonna go for Reconstruction, where no disturbance can be.
His voice, calm, clear, unwavering. But his words did not reach everyone. The crowd was too far, too vast. Only the soldiers nearby heard him, and the man holding the axe. Still, Charles did not stop. He knew these words were for history. He declared he was innocent of the charges. No resistance in his tone, only conviction. He said he had forgiven his enemies. In a man's final moments, this act of forgiveness made the silence even heavier. Then, he spoke a line that captured his entire belief in one sentence. A subject and a sovereign are not the same. They are entirely separate. And England needs a strong king, one who rules, protects, but does not divide authority. This belief, this idea, this unyielding stance had brought him here. He repeated, I am leaving a perishable crown for an imperishable one, where there is no turmoil, no unrest of this world. Where there is no turmoil, no unrest of this world. Then he looked at the man standing before him, the executioner. For a moment, time seemed to stop. Charles' gaze fixed on him. In his hands, a heavy axe. But his face had no identity. He wore worker's clothes. His assistant, too, disguised in the same way, because no one wanted this act in their name. No one wanted history to remember them as the man who killed a king, because no one wanted this act in their name. No one wanted history to remember them as the man who killed a king. In this moment of history, one question still lingers. Who was the executioner, really? Historians still debate, searching for a name. But no one can say for certain. Perhaps that was inevitable, because some acts no one wants tied to their name. Perhaps that was inevitable, because some acts no one wants tied to their name. A king, himself, adjusted his final preparation. He placed a white satin nightcap on his head. Slowly, carefully, the executioner stepped closer and arranged the final strands of his hair, a surreal sight. Two men, one a king, the other an unknown executioner, standing on the stage of death, sharing a strangely gentle, silent moment, as if for a few seconds, everything had stopped. Charles said softly, I will say my final prayer.
I am ready. I go from a corruptible to an incorruptible crown.
No tremor in his voice. When I extend my hands, I will be ready. That would be the signal, the final signal, cold wood, merciless reality. Yet, he began to pray. Around him, thousands of people. Yet in that moment, the world felt silent. Only one man's final prayer, floating through silence. Then, he extended his hands. A small gesture, yet one of the heaviest signals in history. The axe rose for a moment. Time froze. Then, the axe came down. One strike. Clean, precise, merciless. And then, that sound. From the crowd rose a strange, long groan. Thousands of voices merging into one. It was not a scream, not joy, not even sorrow. It was a sound without a name. Those who were there remembered it for life. But never could they truly describe it. It was a mix of awe, fear, shock, and an indescribable void. Something never heard before, and perhaps never needed again. Suddenly, the crowd surged forward. People pushed ahead, pressing against the soldiers. They wanted the scaffold, because they believed in this moment, in this blood, there was something divine. Some held out cloths, others handkerchiefs to touch the king's blood. They believed it carried healing power, a kind of sanctity, a moment of death, slowly turning into belief, into legend. But the soldiers advanced. They pushed the crowd back, firmly, ruthlessly. Order was restored. Slowly, everything began to be dismantled. Before evening, the scaffold was being taken apart, as if nothing had happened. And then, London fell silent again. But this time, the silence was different. Inside this silence, the weight of history lingered. A king's fall, the end of an era, and the beginning of another. This was a different kind of silence, not just the absence of sound, but the birth of a new reality, a heavy, unfamiliar stillness, where one era ended and another began. England suddenly became a republic for the first time, and the only time in its long history. This new chapter lasted 11 years, but 11 years was enough to change the course of history. The 59 men who signed the king's death warrant were later hunted down after the monarchy returned. One by one, some were captured, tried, and executed. Others escaped far away across the sea to America. And there, a strange new history began to take shape. A nation built on a revolutionary idea that power must answer to the people. 1660. London was once again filled with crowds. Charles II returned. The city erupted in celebration. Bell towers rang, cheers echoed, waves of joy spread through the streets, and with it, the monarchy returned. Everything seemed to be back as before, or at least it appeared that way, because in reality, something had changed forever. In some sense, Charles I of England may have been right in his convictions. His belief, his stance, his resolve, all remained in history. But a line had been crossed, a boundary that once crossed cannot be undone, because once, only once, a king stood before a court. Evidence was presented, his voice was heard, and judgment was delivered. However flawed the court, however weak the legal basis, an idea was born, quietly but permanently, that no one is above the law, that power is never beyond question, that even rulers must one day answer. Every constitution in history that limited power, every time ordinary people stood before authority and said, "You must answer to us," in each of those moments, an invisible thread is tied, a thread that pulls us back to that freezing London morning, to a wooden scaffold, to a man who held on to his dignity until the very end, who asked for an extra shirt to fight the cold, and then walked calmly toward his fate. So was Charles a tyrant, or a man unwavering in his belief, who walked a path whose ending he could never have imagined? History does not answer. History only leaves questions. What do you think?